want to talk about starting the year. I know that there's a lot going on. You have a lot to process right now. And so we just wanted to keep this session simple and focused. And we just want to talk about students. And so Lisa, if you then will progress to the next slide. In the next slide, you see our logos. Again, with our contact information, and we invite and we welcome if you have any questions afterwards and you want to continue the conversation with us, please do so. We'll also have our contact information again on this at the final slide at the end of this presentation. So go ahead and move to the next one, Lisa. These reminders, again, please keep your microphone muted and your video, whether you choose to or not, it will save your bandwidth at home. And then let's use the chat window to interact with each other frequently in the course of this next hour. So go to the next slide, Lisa, because the sign-in we've already mentioned, so you can just pass right past that one, Lisa. But I want you to go back in time about 5 years. And I know that a lot of folks like to talk about vision and imagining where they will be in this world. It's probably safe to say that back in 2015, nobody got this question right. Because the way this world is right now, and the way the things unfolded over the past few months, it's been anything but anyone could have imagined, right? But with that though, let's go to the next slide, Lisa. We did want to start with being very self-reflective. So we wanted to ask you guys to consider something, and that is to just think about your own goals and your focus and your beliefs, because how we start this year matters probably more than it ever has. And that being the case, it just feels really significant right now for us to just pause in the midst of all of the chaos and just reflect, what is it that we really value? And what is it that we really believe is important? Lisa and I didn't want to take an hour today and give you a whole bunch of how-tos and nuts and bolts. We are going to open up that in the sessions that follow tomorrow and Thursday. But today, as a place to start, we just wanted us to just pause and think and reflect, what is really important? Because we know that in addition to all of the typical eagerness and anticipation that we have at the beginning of the year, you have standards of mathematical practice, you have science and engineering practices, you have the essential instructional practices in early mathematics, you have disciplinary literacy, you have Bloom's taxonomy, you have depth of knowledge, multiple intelligences and learning styles, you have differentiated learning, not to mention standardized tests. In addition to being the masters of our content, especially for those who switch content from last year to this year, or have adopted new curriculum either last year or this year. So start making your lesson plans and then thinking about how you're going to do your grading and your attendance while maintaining social distancing, virtual learning, and masks. Oh my word. Not to mention a looming nationwide event coming up in November. And with all of these pressures, we wanted to just take a minute and focus. So Lisa's going to put a poll on in a moment. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Lisa, as you're getting the poll ready. I'm going to ask you to just reflect for a moment and think. If you had to set a goal and choose one goal to be your one overarching goal that matters more than anything else, and these were the 4 that you had to choose from, which one would it be? I know it's hard to narrow it down sometimes to one. But you'll see now that there's a poll coming up on your screen. And in that poll, That poll is going to ask you to reflect on and choose one of these 4 goals. Which of those 4 goals, if you had to choose only one, which one would be the most important?
Dave, this isn't supposed to happen, but I'm having a technical difficulty.
Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing for a moment.
Okay. I will share in your stead, and I will put the PowerPoint up.
Thank you.
So that so that at least folks can see the slide.
Yes.
So as you're reflecting, Lisa is preparing the poll. What's the most important? Are you driven right now to find and fill all the gaps in the students' learning? Are you driven with finding a way to try to build a community? Or is it about just your students mastering their topics, their content? Or are you driven right now to build connections between previous concepts and new concepts? Which of those 4 goals is the one that feels the most important to you? So Lisa, are you able to share the poll with the participants?
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm working on it, but
it's okay. You know, it's all right.
It happens to all of us.
I know it happens. Don't worry about it. And the participants who are listening, you can continue to reflect on this, because the polling is a nice feature, but the idea is the bigger idea. And so I want to move on to the next one. You've had a chance to reflect on this. So I'm going to ask you to, since you didn't have the ability to write it, to answer it in a poll, just enter it into the chat window. In your chat window right now, just use one word. Is it gaps, community, master, or connections? Just enter that into the poll. Which of those feels like the most crucial goal to have? So I'm seeing gaps, community. Several are saying community, connections. So Lisa and I, this is what we anticipated, because each of us has a unique focus and a unique passion that is going to guide us, and that's the essence of this 1 hour conversation, is that it is those things that we value that are going to determine how we now progress through the rest of this year. Okay? So the second question that I want to ask, and I'm going to go back to my my slideshow here, and I'm going to go to the next slide. So I'm going to ask you to reflect now about your focus. In light of the goal that you just named, you're going to establish now a focus with your students. So your focus, is it going to be to be driven by administering baseline or diagnostic tests? Or is it about investigating or problem solving, developing reasoning skills? Are you going to be focused on paper and pencil, multiple choice tasks and tests? Or virtual? We didn't put in there, but it could be done virtually as well. But are you focused on noticing student thinking? Or are you focused on attempting to determine groups based on data? So, the goal that you have and the focus that you have here are going to determine how you build the culture of your classroom. So again, take a moment and share your reflections in the chat window. Use one word. Is it baseline? Is it investigating? Is it so focusing on student thinking, developing reasoning skills. Again, we're seeing a lot of, and this is typical, and this is to be expected when we have a room of 67 participants. There's going to be a variety of focus points, but the point that Lisa and I are getting at with you is that our goals and our focus are going to be crucial this year, perhaps more than ever. And so finally, in our third one, I'm going to ask you to reflect on, there are many beliefs that we could have listed, but we've chosen these 4, and you'll see why in just a moment. But which of these beliefs resonates with you most right now, that we need to fill in the gaps? And our students missed a lot of school at the end of the year. And so is that the thing that's driving us right now? Or is it my belief that all students can learn new concepts with the right shared experiences? Is it that differentiated instruction means providing open tasks that are accessible to all and noticing how the students are thinking and processing their way through those tasks? Or is it my belief that differentiated instruction means giving different students different assignments based on their readiness or skill level? So again, you can share your thoughts with the participants. I'm going to go ahead and leave this slide up on the screen so that you can see it as you continue to reflect and again, as you process the responses from some of the other participants. Okay, so let me scroll back through quickly. We looked at some goals and reflected on those goals. We talked about some focus points, and we talked about some teacher beliefs. What I want to do is I want to organize those in the following way. Make no mistake or make no inference that Lisa and I are making any value judgments by any stretch. But at the same time, I do think it's important that we sort of kind of classify gap-driven instruction versus student-driven instruction. The goals and the focus and beliefs that we just reflected on can be categorized. Now, there are other goals, I realize, or other ways that you can categorize things, I realize. But at the same time, if we think of those listed goals, focus points, and teacher beliefs that we just named a moment ago, they can be categorized as gap-driven or student-driven. Meaning, gap-driven instruction, I'm just driven to fill in the gaps that my students have missed. And please understand and please know that if Lisa and I talk to you today about focusing on a student-driven, as you already know from the title of this session, our focus is student-driven instruction. It's no value judgment saying that if you're in a gap-driven situation, whether it be a gap-driven by the culture of the building or the mandate from an administrator or an administration, or even from your own personal feelings. If you feel passionate or if you're in a situation where you're gap-driven, when we're focusing on a student-driven focus, it's not in any way trying to say that a gap-driven environment means you don't care about students, right?
Appreciate you, Ben. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Yes, thank you, Ben. We are going to radically change tone here.
Do we need someone to mute?
So
these?
I'm hearing a lot of background noise from one of the participants. So if you could, thank you so much. So again, so as you reflect as to whether you're, you yourself, the way that you answer those first 3 questions, you align in a gap-driven side or a student-driven side. Even if you're in a gap-driven environment, we're going to encourage you to be student-driven in that gap-driven situation, if that makes sense. So the question then, or the questions that I'd like you to consider, and we're going to break you into breakout rooms in just a moment. But the questions are these. If you're in a gap-driven situation, how can you make that more student-driven? How can we be more student-driven in a gap-driven environment? And how can you do this with social distancing in person or remotely? Right? So Lisa's getting that set up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see all of your faces for those of you that are unmuted. But as you process those two questions, we're going to enter those two questions into the chat window. So I'm going to do that while Lisa's readying the breakout rooms. But basically, we just want you to ask your colleagues and have that discussion. How can you be more student-driven in a gap-driven environment? And how can you do that with social distance and remotely? And some of you are going to have some great ideas to share with others. Some of you may have some questions and frustrations and anxieties about that, but that's the whole point of this conversation now. So Lisa, do you have the rooms ready?
I do.
Okay. So we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes. We're going to give you an opportunity to share with each other. And when we come back, we're going to ask you to be prepared. What I would like for you to do, here's what I'd like for you to do. If you hear a really, really good idea from somebody else, I would like for you to share what you heard from someone else, okay? So that's how I'd like for us to do our share out. And when we come back together, I know we have 70 people in this room, so we can't all share at once, but we're going to ask you to we're going to select 2 or 3 or 4 and ask you to just share something really, really good that you heard from somebody else, okay? So with that, we're going to send you to your breakout rooms. We'll set the timer for 10 minutes. We'll see you back in 10 minutes. Thank you. So welcome back. I was able to make it to, I think, about 4 of the rooms, and I heard some really good things. So that means there were about 6 rooms that I missed. But what we would love to do is we'd love to hear from you, but I would love to hear from you in a way that you're telling me something that you heard from somebody else, because I want today to be about something that you learned. Because if you have a great idea and you share it, and then somebody else picks up that baton, that's a beautiful thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for about 3 seconds, and I know I'm taking a risk here that multiple people might sort of jump in at the same time, but we'll clunkily navigate our way through that if you guys are okay with that. But I'm going to pause right now, and I'm going to wait, and I'm just going to ask for one person right now. We'll maybe do 3, maybe we'll do 4, but I'm going to ask one person to get the ball rolling. What's something really good that you heard from somebody else in your break?
I'm ready, if that's available.
All right,
Hi,
Michelle, go for it. Yeah.
So I was in a group with 4 other wonderful ladies, and I can't believe 10 minutes already went by. We had some awesome conversations.
Yeah.
But something that I heard one of the ladies say is that when we do the breakout rooms, the struggle is, not having an adult there to monitor. Well, someone said once you establish who your students are, you can kind of identify who these leaders are, and then you can start assigning leaders into the breakout rooms. And
That's
I think the kids see that, and then it's like, well, I want to be the leader, so maybe they'll step up their game. So we had really good conversations about that.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's awesome. Somebody else. I know that was hard to follow.
I got one.
All right, awesome. Go ahead, Dana.
One lady suggested in our room to use Flipgrid to have the students introduce themselves at the beginning of the year. And then at the end of the year, they can make another one, and then she can put them together to help build the community.
Oh, cool. Yeah, nice. I like that.
One of the ladies in our group,
Mhm.
one of the ladies in our group mentioned that maybe we could have the parents become monitors in the room as well, if they are available.
Wow.
That was just,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I heard an ooh out there. Some teachers
Yeah.
have parents in the room, but some teachers are like welcoming, say, hey, parents, come on in here, man.
Right. And if you are going to do the parent option, not to squash any great ideas, but just make sure that you've worked it out with your school and your school administration, because there are some issues about privacy and students and things like that. So just make sure that you get permission ahead of time if that's something that you want to use in your school.
Great point.
In our room, if you guys are okay, I'll just tell
Yeah,
you.
go ahead.
Our
Of
room,
course.
we had a lot of anxiety. Because there's so much still to be considered, and there's so many different levels of students. We had kindergartner teachers, different blends of age groups. And
We
so
lost you there for a second, Aria. I'm sorry, we lost you for about a minute.
we had several different age groups in our room. And one of the things that we talked about is having the ability to still connect, because no matter what, if we don't bond with our children, they're not learning anything from us.
That's
And
right.
so we had just started throwing out ideas about, well, what if we try this and turn this into a game and do this and do that, when our 10 minutes ran out. we really, appreciate all the hard work that's been done so far, but March to August is just not enough time. We really just don't feel ready to be back in school. Yeah. So like I said, we came up with the idea of, well, why don't we at least try to turn this first part into a game? Even down to one of the ladies said, have the kids do a tour of their home just to show that you're interested in them, who they are and what they're about. And I said, and if they're too embarrassed to show the whole home, maybe just pick a favorite space or a favorite object in the home that they can describe and talk about why it's their favorite and why they love it. And we can bond over that. And of course, me being a science teacher, I was like, then I could throw in how that's related to science. Try to make something work. Definitely a pet. I just saw that come up in the chat. Definitely a pet. That'd be awesome. But just as teachers, just recognizing how much anxiety we still have, how much anxiety our children may have, and trying to find ways to relieve that pressure so that when we are together, we can actually come together.
Connecting is so important. That's why.
And use the kids as our best weapon.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the title of this session. It's focusing on students and finding ways to build those relationships with our kids, because, your classroom culture is going to evolve one way or the other. That's the bottom line. And so are we going to be the one that's going to kind of navigate that journey, or are we going to kind of let it evolve on its own? And if that's the case, then it's not going to necessarily evolve in the way that we want it to, right? So you guys have had some great things to share. And Lisa and I struggled. We wanted to give you more time, but we also knew that we only had 1 hour with you. So, but thank you for you guys sharing out there. I'm going to pass the baton to Lisa because she's still got some great things to say. You're muted, Lisa.
Yeah, I just said, thanks, Dave. Honestly, if you still have the capacity to join any of the other sessions this week, this was kind of an introduction, just getting us all together. But the sessions that we have planned for the rest of the week are entirely devoted to how do we do this online and trying to help reduce some of that fear factor. So
100%.
Looking at how do we build community with our students, and then how do we really focus very specifically on math or science options. So if you have a chance to still register for those, that would be a great option. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of talked about really, really core issues to teaching as a whole, and then very specifically also teaching in math and science. And so the first one is, what kind of beliefs and values do we have when it comes to thinking about how to help students move forward? And is our administration, is someone else in our building, are we looking at a gap-driven situation where we're trying to kind of fill the holes? Which honestly, right now, we feel like we have a big hole. But at the same time, we work in this environment all the time when we have students come to us and they have different skills, different abilities, different backgrounds. So we're always trying to find good ways to help them move forward. And then at the same time, we look at being student-driven and really focusing on the students themselves and how to help them learn, as opposed to just being focused on filling the holes. So the other piece that we really wanted you to think about that kind of drives how we go through our year is to look at the concept of identity. And how do we consider students either as scientists or mathematicians? So when we think about that, I remember when I was growing up and going to school, nobody ever said, you know, that I was being like a scientist or being like a mathematician or learning those kinds of skills. It was simply, you need to learn this about science, or you need to learn this about math, and here are the facts, and here are the problems that you need to do and get the right answer. Instead, one of the things that we know is really, really powerful about how we talk to students and treat students is if students can actually see themselves as scientists or mathematicians. So what we want you to think about just for a moment is, what are some real world skills and practices that scientists or mathematicians need in their workplace? And then if you're thinking about ideas as a mathematician, we want you to fill out a green sticky note in the Jamboard that we're going to put a link up for. And if you're thinking scientist, we want you to put an answer on a blue sticky note in the Jamboard. Now, some people have used Jamboard before and some people have not. So we're going to put the link up for that right now. And I'm just going to copy this link. Maybe. Unless somebody gets there. Oh, somebody said we might max out at 50 people. Well, we're going to find out. I'm not sure that we personally knew that when we started this that we were going to have quite that many people. So, but we're glad to have you. And if you don't get a chance to get in, you can watch from the side. If you get a chance to right now, just copy this link into your web browser. And then we're going to go there. And if you have an idea of how mathematicians would behave, what skills or practices they would use, you're going to use a green sticky note, and blue is for science. So I'm going to go there on my screen right now. And if you've gone to that link, you should see this toolbar over to the side. This is a Google tool. If you've never used it before, it's one of the, somebody's moving my stickies around. It's a Google tool that you can get through the normal Google things like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms, and it's called Jamboard. So this is a way that you can share a link with students and then have them add, in this case, we're going to put sticky notes in here. If you want to make a sticky note, then you go over to the left-hand side and feature. It lets you choose the color of the sticky note, and then you actually type your words right onto the sticky note. So then you can hit cancel, and then you'll have a sticky note on the screen. If you've not used this function before, some other things you can do on the left, not that you would do them right this minute, but play around with it on your own sometime. You can do markers, painting, highlighting, change the colors. You can erase anything that you've done. The arrow allows you to just click on the things that you want to touch. You could have students add pictures or images. So someone was saying they could do this, like have students on a different program, but show their pet or show something, maybe a picture of something that's special to them. You could add pictures and have them add wording about it. You can add shapes, text boxes, so text that's not on a sticky note. And then this last tool is a laser. So if I wanted to maybe refer to something on here, well, I could point at something and say, hey, let's look at this right here. Let's look at problem solving. Or I'm going to circle problem solving, and I want you to look at it, and then my laser goes away. All right, so as we've been kind of chatting here, you're seeing all kinds of ideas popping up on the screen, and then someone is kindly sorting as we go. There was a question in the chat, does the Jamboard, for the Jamboard, does the teacher have to approve the post first? They do not. So if you are concerned about inappropriateness, I guess that would have to be part of your classroom environment and having consequences for things like that. If you do it this way, it is anonymous, so students do not have to, their name is not on it, they're just one of the anonymous animals on the top. If you really wanted to make sure that all students were participating, you could give them a number and have them just, put number 3 this or number 5 that, or you could have them put initials on it. But most people just tend to do this, tend to do it anonymously. And then another option is at the top. If you somehow were to run out of space or you wanted another page for something, you could click to the next frame and it would give you another blank page where you could do something. So I've used this with groups before, where group 1 might be in the first frame and group 2 or group 3, group 4, and then they'll each be doing their own thing on their separate frames. Dolores said, yes, you can also do the same sort of thing with Padlet. That is true. So, all right, let's take a look at the ideas we have here. Okay, if you were a mathematician, let's look at what kind of things you would be doing. If we're concerned that maybe one of these stickies, whoops, I'm still on the laser, were too small, like, whoa, that's tiny, I can't read that. Well, I could take it and maybe move it and you can resize them and make it bigger so I can actually read communication now. All right, so we have we could put things together, like we could say we've seen problem solving a couple times, so we can put those together. Okay, ooh, multiple ways to handle a problem and problem solving. Okay, we might want to group some things together. Okay, here's multiple entries again. Okay, so let's look at science. Okay, here's some scientists. Do we see anything in common here? Oh, I see some people moving stuff. So we have observations, asking questions. Got some data, analyzing data. Okay, making claims, creating models. Sure, okay. And we have more claims and evidence down here on the bottom. Okay, we have some technical skills like measuring volume or measuring other things. Sure. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that we think about when we're talking about students being mathematicians or scientists. So one of the things that we can do is kind of say, well, how do we know that? Where do we get that material from? And I don't know about you, but I remember when I was teaching high school, I used to tell my students that, that we're getting them ready for the real world. However, in complete honesty, I was teaching all day, every day. I didn't have time to go out into the quote unquote real world and go and see what mathematicians are doing or scientists were doing. And I honestly didn't know a lot of people growing up that were in math or science fields. I lived in a very economically depressed area, and we didn't really know people with very high level kind of academic backgrounds or things like that. So for me, I thought, well, I don't really know what those things are. But we do have things in our practice for sure. We have the mathematics practices for students on the left in green, and we have the science and engineering practices on the right with blue. And these are really, really important parts of our standards and what we believe and what we say we are going to do for students. Well, if that is the case, if we actually look at what is in these are telling us the kinds of skills and practices that people need if they're in science and engineering or if they're using mathematics. So even though we may not have thought about it that way before, using the practices in math and science are an excellent way for us to talk to our students about being mathematicians and scientists and engineers. And as much as it might sound strange, I'm in a workshop right now for chemistry where the presenter continually comes back to and says, Right now, we're going to participate in a practice that's commonly used by scientists and engineers. We're going to do some work with modeling, or we are going to do some questioning, or explaining with evidence. And so every time he comes back to that statement of this is what engineers commonly do, this is what scientists commonly do, it makes me realize that that's the kind of language that I was missing in the past. So this really does relate back to our beliefs and what we're thinking. Another place that this comes up is in the essential practices that we see for math. So we have essential instructional practices in mathematics. I've seen in the early mathematics pre-K to 3. And then the other one that I've looked at is essential practices for disciplinary literacy, which has math and science for grades 6 through 12. And this top statement is exactly, almost exactly the same word for word, except that they switch out the word scientific or mathematical. So for either one, for science or math, it says within phenomenon or problem-based units, the teacher creates opportunities for students to enact scientific or mathematical and literate identities, drawing from both within and outside of school literacy practices. So what we're saying is we want students to have these identities. We want them to be able to see themselves and think of themselves as scientists and mathematicians. Okay, in the mathematics, the essential practices, we value children seeing themselves as mathematics doers, knowers, and contributors to the field of mathematics. And then you will recognize this very famous speaker who made this quote at the end. Students need to be able to read, write, speak, listen to, and do science, or maybe math. So that is me. I was a science educator for over 20 years, and now I work at Wayne Risa, but I also was a German teacher. And it made sense to me all the time and to my brain that we need to be able to teach science the same way we teach language. That kids need to be able to read it, write it, speak it, listen to it, and do it. And if they can do those things, which is exactly what we did in my language class, they had to be able to read, write, speak, and listen to our language to be functional. If they can do that in science, then they are also going to be proficient as well. So we are at 4:08. That means we have a little bit of time, Dave, that we can do questions and answers and see if there's anything we can help anyone with.
It's the whole focus of all 4 of these workshops this week is how do we connect with our kids virtually, face-to-face, but especially virtually because, you know, that's the big challenge of where we're at in this world right now. Right. So we are glad to continue to take questions, whether that is through the chat or out loud. And we have two links that we'd like you to go to. Sharon and I just put them in the chat. So one is evaluation and feedback for the organization as a whole. And the other exit ticket is, and I'm sorry, I don't know which one's which. And one the QR code is the evaluation. So you can just take your phone right now and zoom in on that QR code, and it will take you right to the evaluation. It's about 5-6 questions. I don't remember the exact number, but it's pretty short. The exit ticket is just like a sign out, like you signed in. The exit ticket is your sign out. And as Lisa mentioned, we would be thrilled to continue the conversation with you, whether it's in the chat window now or whether it's if you want to take down our contact information and continue to dialogue with us over the course of the next weeks and months. We're here to assist you in any way that we can. So thank you again for giving up your time today to participate in this workshop. And we hope you guys come back to hear more because we've got some great things planned for you tomorrow and then Thursday.
So this is kind of our kickoff
This is our fall kickoff.
Get us all together.
We're planning series of workshops that we're going to be presenting similar to today. So just be looking for those and you know, keep in contact with us. And I I'm not sure if the math has a group, but I mean, I'm not sure if the science has a group, but at Wayne Risa, we have a math listserv group that if you're interested in participating in receiving information from us, please send us, you can send me an email and we'll add you to our math listserv, and you can contact Lisa to see. I'm sure, Lisa, you have something like that in science too.
We do.
All right. So I'm just going to thank you again. Appreciate you guys taking the time to be here today. And thank you, Lisa, for giving up your time to prepare all of this with me. I've enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Same here. All right, Dave and I are going to stay on for a few minutes here. If you've had a chance to go through both the evaluation and the exit tip, you're welcome to sign out. You'll have a great beginning to the school year. I heard somebody recently say, how are you feeling about the beginning of the school year? And one of the options was optimistic. And I actually found myself in the place of optimistic because I thought,
All right.
as much as all of this is challenging, we can make it the best we can make it. And we can say, you know what, this does not have to be frustrating. It does not have to be a disaster. We can do amazing things with our students. Absolutely amazing.
Hear, hear.
I'm optimistic.
Hear, hear. Thank you all so much.